And we wanted to welcome you here for this work in progress of our opera, Penelope and the Geese. So first we wanted to tell you a little bit about the conception of this piece. So Milica and I met in January of 2018 at the Composer Librettist studio in New York, where over 17 days there were 5 composers, 5 librettists, and 5 performers. And during the course of it, each writer was paired with each composer and given a series of prompts and 36 hours to write a song. So, right, as you can imagine. So we were paired, and our prompt was pick a story that everybody knows, check. Use repetition, and use visual mapping. We had no idea, and we still don't know what that is. Anyway, so this was song number 3, and so at this point it was like day 11, and you're like totally tired, and so we were given the prompts, and I was like, okay. I've always been really bothered by the story of Penelope in the Odyssey, because it's supposed to be this great love story, but basically Odysseus desperately wants to come home and has sex with anything that doesn't walk away from him, while Penelope is at home weaving and unweaving, and not allowed to even look at any man lest she be killed, like the slaves. And so I said, what if, instead of the shroud that Penelope is weaving, if instead she's had all these lovers and she's cut off a lock of each of their hair and she's woven it into a blanket, and Odysseus comes home after 20 years and they make love and he falls asleep under this blanket and she cuts off a lock of his hair and she says, where should I weave his hair? Where should I put all of this into the narrative? And any normal person would have said, what? And instead, Milica said, wow, let's write that. So I wrote for 45 minutes, because it was like and I was like, here. And
then what happened was we wrote this 7-minute song, trying really, at least I was trying to, at that point, respond to the prompt that we were given and do the homework. And so we wrote a 7-minute song that was really just a stream of lovers that she had met and loved and had relationships with during her husband's absence. And we performed that the next day.
It was really tight.
It was really tight, and then people enjoyed it.
In our composer librettist studio, everybody goes, "Oh my God, you need to expand that. It's an opera." And I said, "Oh, have you ever written an opera before?"
And I said, "No, I've done like a bunch of like beginnings, but nothing. Strangely enough, nothing really worked out enough to become like a full-blown opera. So like maybe this is the one."
Yeah, and I said, "I've never written an opera," and we said, "Cool, let's go do that." So then, cut to in the summer of 2018, I came here to, I used to be the playwright in residence from 2015 to 2016, and Sewanee has been amazing in supporting my work, like unbelievable. It's an artistic home of mine. And I came to teach at the School of Letters, and I went over to Terry Papillon and Liesel's house, and Terry said, "What are you working on?" And I said, "This crazy opera about Penelope." And he's like, "Awesome, you're gonna perform it here." And I was like, "Oh." Meanwhile, I had just asked Milica, I was like, "Hey, I've got a 4-bedroom house."
I'm like, "Yeah, sure, get out."
So she just like came down to Sewanee, and we wrote the first few songs on Shana Minkin's porch. Unfortunately, she's not here, but we presented about 10 minutes, maybe 12 minutes of material last summer. And then...
So the original 7 7-minute song plus maybe
Plus 2 other songs.
7 more minutes that we've written during the residency.
And then while I was here, there was a man named John Ernest, who was the chair of the English department at University of Delaware, who took one look at me and said, "Hey, Susan Stroman, who's a Tony Award-winning producer and director, just gave us some money to have a playwright and residence program at UD. Do you want to be the first one?" And I was like, "Is that a trick question? Because that sounds very cool." So he saw the first flirt of the opera and eventually connected me to the wonderful Blake Smith, who is not here with us tonight. We are so sad, but he is the head of the voice department at University of Delaware. And I started talking to him about it, and he's like, "Great, we're going to do a workshop of it in March." And I was like, "What is it that everybody keeps saying? Yes, it's amazing." And he introduced us to Jim Anderson, our conductor, and who's here. Three of our singers were in that performance: Nicole, Kaitlyn, and Cassidy on the end. So, and then when I told Blake, I was like, "Oh yeah, we have this workshop in Sewanee." He's like, "Great, I'm gonna bust some singers there and some musicians." And then we were like, "Oh, that's nice." So that is where we met Sarah down here, and the rest of our singers: Rachel, Hannah, Rachel, Cara. I got everybody, right? Yeah. So, and backing up, when I was here last summer and I told Chris McDonough that I was writing something about Penelope, he's like, "Oh my goodness, you have to talk to Stephanie McCarter." And so that has begun a lovely dialogue among the three of us. Stephanie's here. We are very grateful. It's called Penelope and the Geese because of the conversation that we had. And Stephanie's going to be joining us afterwards for our talk back, so please stay afterwards. And then this summer, I have to give a big, big thank you to Alex. Where is Alex? Alex Bruce, who has been an amazing co-producer for us. I also want to thank the people that donated housing for us. So that's Sherry Bergman, and that is Cindy Crysdale, and then my dear friend Lucy Patterson Murray. You're amazing. I have asked her to add more internet like 17 times while we've been here. I don't know what we're doing. So, and Liam, who's doing the lights, and Allie, who's doing the super titles from the Sewanee Summer Music Festival. Eric and Chris for the use of their offices as a green room. The Sewanee Summer Music Festival has given us the music stands and their people, and that has been really helpful. So now
we're sure we're forgetting somebody. Please forgive us. There's so many people that came through for this to make it what it is.
Yeah, we're very grateful. Oh, NYU, who gave me a Dean's grant also for this. So we wanted to just tell you that what you're going to hear today is. What happened was I wrote the libretto, and then you should talk about your process.
Yeah, so Cheryl wrote the libretto because once we decided we were going to do it, they were like, "Okay, so now what?" And then apparently, you know, if you want to do something, you have to raise funds for it. Yeah. And we were applying to the various grants, and one of them required us to have a draft of a libretto, and we totally misread that.
Well, they said they
actually wanted a full, real libretto, like, yes, the first draft, but not like a sample page or two, just the whole deal. So Sherry was like, "Okay, I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna make it," and she did it. She did it in like 5 days. That's crazy. And then we had about a half of it produced at the University of Delaware in March, and then this is the very, very, very first draft of the whole thing, and you're the first audience that are hearing that. And honestly, Cheri and I have heard it for the first time just a few hours ago. So we appreciate you sharing, you know, your ear and your feedback with us afterwards in feedback. And what we are hoping to get from this is to really just get a sense of the whole, because the way that we wrote it is not really conventional. We didn't write it from the beginning to the end. We wrote it from like this 7-minute blueprint of a thing, and that now had exploded into all these various sections. So it's an unconventional piece, so therefore there's an unconventional kind of mode of writing it. So a lot of the things will be, or a few at least, will be either shortened or lengthened, or the orders might be switched around, or transitions may be, or worked on, so all of it is still very much a work in progress, and also there's no staging as of now. There's like minimal movement with our singers, instrumentalists, but eventually there will be movement. There will be the whole beating thing is going to be a dance thing, and more lights and more.
So the hair is gonna,
We're actually gonna be going around and cutting.
Yeah, right. Thank you for your contribution.
Everywhere.
So just know that there'll be a whole choreographic element, there'll be a staging element. You are hearing the concert reading of what will be a fully staged work. And you wanted to talk about the instrumentation.
I'd like to talk about the instrumentation. So right now we have 3 instrumentalists here, and they will be the orchestra will continue to be small.
Wait, hold on. Barbara and Rebecca, who joined us from Sewanee. I knew we were.
So the orchestra will continue to be small. We insist that everybody in the cast is female. There will be male actors, at least is included, but they don't get to speak, sing, play, or do anything of that sort. But our instrumentalists will also be doubling the Western contemporary instruments. Will also have the ancient twin presented in one of the future readings. And so the harp, which is now a keyboard, which will be a harp, will also have a lyre, and then the flute will have a duple in aulos, and then the cello will have the gusle. Before I talk about gusle just a little bit more, everybody will also play a little bit of a percussion. So we didn't really get to it this time, but this is one of the types of the percussion instruments. There'll be household instruments, spoons, chalices, little small drums, and other things you would find in goddesses' houses. And then this weird instrument I'm holding right now is something that is traditionally, used to accompany epic poetry in remembering it and just translating it from generation to generation, also to composing it. It's called gusle, and it was used all over the Balkans, and it sounds a little bit something like this.
Citrus and brittle pine Thank you. He's Look what I found in a box in a trunk under the stair.
Oh no!
Oh yes, where will you weave his hair?
Not those, not that!
Look what I found in a bag. Look what I found in a box in a trunk under the stair. Sloppy Simon in a box in a trunk
Hockey Calvin!
under the stair.
Unhappy Alyssa!
Johnny was black, Bonnie was black, Andrew was much, and Casey was such a whore. Cupid shot them in all the wrong places.
He missed me as well.
Next
stay close. Thank you so much for coming. Wow. Bit of a workout. Okay. So,
They were seriously like,
I think it's a little bit cruel and unusual punishment that I'm asked to moderate after conducting through that fabulous work, but I'm thrilled to be here with these three wonderful ladies, and I just wanted to say that creative workshops are really an excellent opportunity for us to explore some artistic material and to solicit feedback from all the performers and from you, the audience. So I just want to reinforce the fact that you are active participants in this, and we look forward to hearing to what you have to say. Your questions, there'll be time for that at the end, and also your insights into the work itself. So what I think I should do by starting out is just have this distinguished panel introduce themselves, and we'll start with Milica.
my name is Milica Paranosic, and I composed this work.
I'm Cheri Magid, I'm the librettist.
I'm Stephanie McCarter, and I teach here in the Department of Classics.
Thank you. And I'm James Anderson. I'm the Director of Orchestral Activities at the University of Delaware, and thrilled to be part of this process. So why don't we kick this off with Milica. In March, we did a workshop on the University of Delaware campus that presented 9 of the numbers. And tonight we have an additional 9, and some of the original ones were expanded and reimagined in certain ways. And I'm curious what's next in the creative process. You mentioned earlier that maybe this is the complete opera. Maybe there's more numbers to be added.
There's more. I think we're missing a bunch of, like, at least a few more lovers. Never enough lovers. There's a few more lovers that we're missing. There's also several 2 to 3 maybe instrumental interludes that we're going to write. We are going to write them. And also we're going to add the staging, the movement, and just working with a dramaturg, director, choreographer to make it like a real full staged version. And also the order might change slightly, so the sequence is not necessarily the sequence that will stay. And then we'll also work on transitions a little bit more.
I would also say that, like, one of the first conversations that Stephanie and I had when we presented the first song was she goes, "You wrote a catalog." And I was like, I wrote something that's an actual thing. So just the list of lovers, and to my mind, I feel like there's a few more of that. Like, there's something about the aggregate of her having all these lovers that's like the spine of it. And then one thing we didn't do is that there's all these alternate stories about what happened to Odysseus and Penelope after Odysseus returns. And so we were going to weave that into the end. We just didn't have time to do that. So, yeah.
So I'll just jump in also. When I'm preparing an opera, one of the first things that I like to do is to go to the libretto and read that completely without the music added. And then that allows me to start to develop some sort of psychological context for the work. But I remember reading, in particular, at the end, there's this list of well, some say that Odysseus murdered her,
yeah,
and some say that he forgave her, or some said that he left and went off on another voyage. And
One is that, do you remember, like, she marries the son, she goes off with the son of Circe and Odysseus or something like that?
There is a version like that. That's when Madeline Miller takes up.
Oh, okay.
The novel Circe. So yeah, I mean, you can rewrite these the alternate Sapphire.
Yeah, we thought that was really fascinating, that what happens after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there, in the libretto, the very last line is what Penelope delivers. It's Odysseus, I have something to tell you. And then you're wondering, which is the story?
Which version?
You know, which ones
Yeah.
will it be? So I think there's some interesting additional things that may be added in. Good. Cheri, talk to us a little bit about the role of the librettist, about how you go about creating dialogue and lyrics for an opera, and maybe what are some of the resources that you consulted or people who helped influence the outcome of the libretto?
Well, like I said, we wrote the first song, and we literally were under duress of like creating something in 36 hours. So when I met with Stephanie and she said you wrote a catalog, and I was like, oh wow, and I hadn't read the Odyssey for years. And so what I did is I tried to take Spot. You had actually sent me some sections, like the Geese was one of the first sections, and then when I was writing, because we had such a short timeline to create the whole libretto, I knew Circe was in it, I knew Calypso, we wanted all the female voices to be in there. And so I didn't, it's funny because Milica didn't compose in order, I didn't write in order. I just wrote Spot things and then moved things around. But I was very conscious of Emily Wilson's translation. And if for any of you guys who haven't read it, it's unbelievable. It's such a page turner, and her commentary is amazing. Yeah, and it's interesting hearing it, and like one of our objectives was to level the playing field, and I feel like we did that, so that was very exciting.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, how is it different than writing a play? Is there a different approach to it, or?
It's so different because you're singing it, and that was a process that I had to learn. Like there's certain, so what Milica often did is I would write something in my lyrics automatically. I have a lot of repetition, or maybe I took that lesson about repetition that we were taught, but she definitely then would like move things around and say, can you expand a few lines here? So it's much more, it's like an emotional thing as opposed to like I don't know, it's less nailed down. What I found, it was more of a swirling in emotions and weaving and all of that than like a proper scene in a play. It felt more swirly.
It's really, and it actually reminds me a little bit of the conversation we just had a couple of days ago, and we talked about the translation, and there is a little bit of the translation that goes on between Cheri's version of the libretto and my version of the libretto when I hear things, and now they had to be translated in a way that they're singable, and sometimes they just automatically land to whatever, you know, our idea was, and other times they need to be like fewer words or more words, so it's really just kind of like redoing the same, like with a great respect of her fabulous work, but also with a lot of like mutual trust and you know, that we will just honor our ideas, but really sort of like reinventing it a little bit to fit a certain metric or the tempo or timing or whatever it is, motion that we are,
She keeps threatening to get me to write a dactyl hexameter, which is
You're doing it.
terrifying.
You are doing it.
The rhythmic possibilities for that.
Yeah.
So Stephanie, before you tell us a little bit about your involvement in this project, maybe a broader question about the classics. I'm curious about what you feel, what lessons can be gleaned from a study of the classics in today's contemporary society. I mean, often we look at the headlines and we think, my God, are we in a Greek tragedy now? But I'm curious, what lessons do you think apply to today's society, and maybe then jump into this project?
That is a rather large question. What I try to take up a lot in my classes, and I think in particular for this play and what's being done with the female characters in it, is just giving them a voice. The Odyssey certainly has tons of women and features lots of female characters, but it doesn't challenge, and this really challenges that narrative. One of my favorite things was the way that they call it errato and challenge the version that's been given by Calypso, and so I think what it can just teach us is that you know, to find a defiant voice, right? And you can use the classics to do that. The classics doesn't have to be this unquestionable authority, right? You can challenge it. You can invoke. You can invoke it in complex contemporary questions.
Yeah, there's this mythology that surrounds it, and yet the themes feel very contemporary to me. But, so in some of the advertising for our production, I've noticed one tagline that said, "It's not an opera, it's a manifesto." And so I'm curious, what declarations do you think the work proclaims? And maybe a related question is, why this particular opera now?
So we talked about this, that Mary Beard says that the patriarchal culture that we have now is a direct inheritance from Greek mythology. And that, for instance, in the Odyssey, it is, I mean, it's really interesting because somebody literally, like a few weeks ago, said to me that the Odyssey was their favorite book, and I said, why? And she said, it's such a beautiful love story. And I was like, okay, that's terrifying, because, you know, Odysseus says he wants to come home, but he's with Calypso for 7 years and Circe for 1, and like he gets to experience all these things, and no one questions that he's not faithful and that he wants to come home, and Penelope's not allowed to have anything. Like, she's just supposed to wait. And I feel like even in this day today, it's much more acceptable for a man to stray than a woman. And that's directly from the Odyssey. So I just think, and it's interesting because we've talked a lot about Me Too, and it's like I felt like a lot of times before Me Too, nobody understood what I was doing, and then Me Too came along and they're like, oh, they got it. But like, one thing that's often left out of Me Too in female empowerment is female desire. It's just not discussed, it's not okay to discuss it, or it's bastardized or made. So that is part of the manifesto that I did it for Penelope. You can take that, we've been using it for everything. But just that this metric that we've inherited is bullshit and needs to be looked at. And
if you just for 1 second just turn this on its head and imagine a businesswoman on a trip, and she gets in trouble, and then she gets in a lot of trouble, and then she gets to meet all these men, and then the way to get out of trouble, she just sleeps with all these men, and then she kind of tries to like fix it by sleeping with others on the way back home. And who would call that woman a superhero, an exemplary, cultural hero that people swear by? And it's just so black and white in this example that it's kind of like mind-blowing a little bit.
I wonder what kind of responses you've had to the fact that Penelope does have this catalog of lovers. I mean, are people shocked by it? Are they okay with it? Do they push back against it?
There's definitely people that have been uncomfortable, and we had one person the last time who was like, you're taking away her power. I don't know what exactly, like the fact that she was smart in outwitting the suitors and all of that, and like that perhaps we weren't looking at that. And I'm like, well, she is all those things, but still. So I mean, if you think about people who have husbands that fight in Afghanistan or wherever, and then they're missing. If they're missing for 20 years, is that woman really supposed to sit there and wait? I mean, that just doesn't seem fair. And that also brings me to the Geese, which is, I would love you to talk about the Geese and the conversation that we had.
It's just this very interesting moment in the Odyssey where Penelope is speaking with the disguised Odysseus, and she says that, I had this dream, tell me what it means. And so it asks to be interpreted, which is interesting. And she says that she had these geese, she loved them, or she had a dream, rather, that she had these geese, and she was watching them, and she loved the geese, and they made her happy, and then this eagle swooped in and killed them all, and she was crying. And Odysseus, in disguise, interprets this dream as, oh, great news, your dream is going to come true. I'm the eagle, and I'm going to kill them all. They're your suitors. And so I just thought that, that has always been a very strange and a moment in the Odyssey, and it really invites you to wonder how she has felt about the suitors all of these years. Why did these geese make her happy? And why in the world would Odysseus interpret the dream so badly? And so it just, to me, that was just, that the geese and then the catalog kind of went together, and the catalog of lovers that she's taken pleasure from just worked really well.
Great. Well, I want to stress again that it's an incredible rarity to have this creative team here and for you to interact with them. So are there any questions from the audience? Yes?
How did you decide to have Penelope have female as well as male lovers?
Oh, we wrote the first song, and there was Gwen and Stephanie in it, which is hilarious. When I met Stephanie, I'm like, you're in our song! But it just, I don't know, that was like a fever dream of writing, so I think it just happened that way, and then
I remember, we were in a room, and they were like, do you think they're women also? And
Really? We had that discussion?
yeah, we
I don't
did.
remember
Totally
that.
did.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like, one or more? Like, more. Just, it's possible. All of this is about a possibility. It could have been that way. We don't know. Nobody talks about that. Nobody talks about her. Nobody talks about various other Penelopes in various other stories. And we're just keep hearing one-sided stories. So we're just trying to reimagine, her journey. She had a journey.
I like that.
So-
One of the lone voices of female desire you do have in each world is Sappho, which is
So it's really difficult to see out here, so just go ahead and shout out your question.
Kaitlyn.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for sharing this work with us. You had talked about working on various endings that you want to tie into it, and I was wondering if you already have a sense of where they would appear, because I think leaving us with
Thank you.
Penelope, so I have to tell you this.
Yeah.
That is this beautiful open ending.
Thank you.
So don't take that away from us.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But then how do you conceptualize those other possibilities?
So compositionally, if I may, these things don't really necessarily happen in order. This whole opera happens in a maybe a moment that's a night, and all of these are flashbacks. So the beginning and the ending are 5 minutes away, or maybe a night away, but all of the things that happen in the meantime are memorized. So it's not a very linear story, and I do really like the ending of, just this is the ending, there's something I need to tell you. And if there is something that we want to communicate that, might have happened after she does tell him that, it might have happened sometime before it. Just there have been things that, happened before chronologically, but we sing about them after. But I really agree with you, and I have to say that was, should I say this?
I don't know what you're going to say, so go ahead.
It was a very typical male question.
Oh.
And then? I'm like, there's no and then, that's it. That's your punchline.
Yeah.
But it's just that, the action versus
The internal.
Exactly. The
Yeah.
external versus internal action, or emotional versus actual, whatever, something actual, whatever that means.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's interesting just to follow that reaction from people.
Well, and you really, I feel you really need the agency with her.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We are left with her making the decision to tell.
Yeah.
And taking the power into her
And
hand to
the power of what the next
in a way it does, he can choose to be a part of it or not, but her mind is set.
She becomes moment.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
great now.
Thank you, Terry.
Yes. Question over here.
With each of these stories of the lovers, you sort of describe an emotional offspring of each relationship, but I wondered about the possibility of physical offspring all
Oh,
these lovers
right.
who were mostly male.
Right.
And this part about have something to tell you.
Oh my God, that's so funny. Do you know we've never thought about that? And of course, like, if she had that many lovers, it's pretty possible that she has, like, the geese are her kids. That's what it is.
Yeah, that's another open end to me. Like we have, yeah, I think the open-endedness of like what geese really are is another really nice open question to leave. Yeah, it could be kids.
Maybe,
And
I'm sorry.
There is like, Odysseus actually is present in the opera. He's going to be
He's
part
asleep.
of it. She's just asleep.
Asleep the whole time.
Yeah, he's under the blanket. He's passed out after, adventures and sex.
He's tired. He's exhausted.
Yes, in the back.
I just wanted to ask, because my question kind of ties into that with like the question of Telemachus, which is Penelope's and Odysseus' son. Like, and I love how you gave her this role outside of mother and outside of wife. And so, but have y'all considered like the question of Telemachus in the midst of?
You mean, where is he while all this is taking place?
Yes, or like, is there some sort of like guilt mixed in with that, with him being there?
Oh, like specific guilt towards him. Is that what you mean?
Or just in general, just like the role of Telemachus, like having a son with Odysseus while Odysseus is away.
Oh,
God, I don't think we ever really thought about that. That's really,
maybe
that's it's just interesting. We didn't really talk about. I mean, I think part of it is, like, we also talked about this, that he silences her that one time. And so I was like, screw him, he's not an opera now.
Any other questions? Yeah, maybe one more. Two more. We got two more left. So the way in the back here, the light collector.
Yeah, thank you so much for your performance. I really enjoyed that. I loved your engagement with the ancient sources. It brought to mind there's a commentator that says that after the events of the Odyssey, that Penelope runs off with Apollo.
Right, yeah, that was one of the stories. Yep. Yep.
Strange monster.
Yeah.
I really liked it, and I love the allusions to the bird song all throughout. Really well done. It's all in the goose scene in the Odyssey as well. I also love your use of the sort of epithet complicated for Penelope, which I believe, I remember correctly, is also in Emily Wilson.
Yes, it is. For Odysseus. Yep.
So I guess my question, if there's one, is just what is the most salient aspect of Penelope's complication? Is she complicit, or is she interested in maybe all those things?
Wait, I'm sorry, what do you mean, is she complicit? What do you mean?
Well, maybe in the deaths of the slave women.
Well, okay, so what's interesting is when you read the Emily Wilson translation is that sometimes the slaves are like having affairs and sometimes they're being raped, and it's like, so it goes back and forth. Do you experience that too? Like, yeah, so, in our version, if Penelope's been doing the same thing as them, why are they dead and she's not? So it was just this whole, question of that, of like also class. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question. Good.
So I think one more, and then if you have questions, we're going to meet in the back. We have a little post-reception, and please keep the dialogue going. But one more, and then we'll...
Sure, I was just going to compliment y'all on the transvaluation of the bed, the axis.
Oh, good. Yeah, we forgot to talk about that.
That for me was the most powerful
Awesome.
point. I would make that the midpoint of the
Yes.
Cool.
place, because that's where Odysseus thinks everything's stable, everything
Yeah,
goes.
yeah.
Oh, wait, it's growing.
Exactly.
It's
Right,
changing.
yeah.
It just resonated so well,
Cool.
because it also becomes a mocking, a taunting of her.
Yep.
This was supposed to be the stability, and
Yes.
so
Yeah.
thank you.
That will definitely be part of our set design and part of the dancer movement and the stuff
Yes,
that we have
I
to
was
do.
imagining a whole
Absolutely.
ballet. I want to see the bedpost come to life.
Yes, that's
exactly
right.
That's exactly right.
I love, the bed is sort of the trick, right? Only she knows that the bed is the tree, right? And it's carved it from a tree. And in the Odyssey, it's unclear. Like, if you look at it, you can't even tell that it's a tree, right?
Right.
It's supposed to trick you. But when the bed is in a lot of ways symbolic of the marriage, this
Yes.
dead
Yeah.
thing, right?
Yeah.
Until it comes to life through what she's doing, right? And in a way she's keeping the marriage living through that.
Absolutely. And then, like, there's a funny thing that actually the first lover she sings about is a gardener. Yeah.
So before we wrap, is there anything else the panel would like to offer to the audience?
Just that we're so grateful to be here. I mean, we're so grateful we've been supported now. This is our second summer being here. And for artists to hear a large work, I mean, like, because if you don't hear it aloud, you have absolutely no idea what you have. You just don't. And so to sit there and to be like, oh wait, you know, we need to do this, or Bill to hear like you need the tree in the middle, like we just wouldn't know that if Milica played the music and like we hummed the lyrics, which is a terrifying idea. So yeah.
Well, and also for me as a composer, usually you get like one chance, like you got even if you get commissioned, God forbid. You get commissioned to do like a symphonic orchestra piece, and then you hear it once, and that's your like one and only time, and like, damn it, I wish this was shorter, I wish this harmony was like placed there. So for us to actually be able to develop this in stages, and talk to each other, and talk to all of you, and have the feedback, and then revisit, it's such a luxury, and of course to work with all the amazing people and musicians, and you know, to actually just make it all happen, it's just such a blessing. I'm so moved. I've been like crying for like 3 days straight right now. So
yeah, and buy a t-shirt.
Buy a t-shirt.
Do it for Penelope.
Do it for Penelope.
Do it for Penelope.
Do it for Penelope.
It was said at the beginning, the thank yous, but I think they're worth repeating again. Thank you, Milica, Cheri, Stephanie. Thank you to the University of the South. Thank you to Alex Bruce. Where's Alex Bruce? And Allie, and of course, yes, one round of applause. These wonderful musicians here. And a big thank you for all of you for coming. Thank you so much.
So much.
See you in the back of the hall.
Yay.